Something happened in 1980 that most people have never heard of. A single court case, 9 judges, 1 question on the table. Can a living thing be patented? Before that case, the answer was no. Life was not an invention. You could not own it. Seeds had been planted, harvested, saved, and shared by farmers for 10,000 years, and nobody could stop you. After that case, everything changed. And if I told you that one decision is part of why food costs what it costs today, why farmers in Ghana are going into debt, why smallholder farmers in India face impossible choices every season, why 4 companies now control more than half the world's food supply, you would probably want to know exactly what happened in that courtroom. So let's go back to 1980. The case was called Diamond v. Chakrabarty. A scientist named Ananda Chakrabarty had genetically engineered a bacterium that could break down crude oil. He wanted to patent it. The patent office said no, living organisms cannot be patented. Chakrabarty appealed. The case went all the way to the Supreme Court, 5-4, in his favor. Living organisms could now be patented in the United States. Now stay with me here, because Chakrabarty was not trying to patent a crop. He was trying to patent a bacterium for cleaning up oil spills. But the ruling was broader than his case. It opened a door, and the companies waiting on the other side of that door walked straight through it. Within 15 years, Monsanto had patented the Roundup Ready soybean. Within 20 years, genetically modified seeds covered millions of acres, and the contract attached to those seeds was unlike anything farmers had ever signed before. Here is what the contract actually said. You can plant this seed once, 1 season. When you harvest your crop, you cannot keep any of the seeds it produces for the following year. You must come back and buy new seed every single year from us. Farmers had been saving seed for 10,000 years. This contract made it illegal. And if you broke the contract, Monsanto had a team for that. Between 1997 and 2013, they filed 142 lawsuits against 410 farmers and 56 small businesses across 27 U.S. states. They took 11 cases to trial. They won all 11. The total extracted from farmers in recorded judgments, $23 million. $23 million from farmers. But here is the part that most people miss. This started in America, but it did not stay there. Those same 4 companies, Bayer, which now owns what used to be Monsanto, Syngenta, Corteva, and BASF, control 56% of the global seed market and 61% of the global pesticide market. Not the American seed market, the global one. And the intellectual property model that made seed saving illegal in the United States has been traveling ever since. Written into trade agreements, pushed through international protocols, lobbied into the legislatures of countries whose farmers still save seed because it is the only way they can afford to farm. Ghana had a plant variety protection bill introduced into its parliament. If passed as originally written, it would have criminalized the informal seed exchange systems that the majority of Ghanaian smallholder farmers depend on entirely. Tanzania already has a Seeds Act, passed in 2003, that prohibits the exchange and sale of farmers' seeds. The African Regional Intellectual Property Organization has been pushing a seed harmonization protocol across the continent that would extend patent protections to plant varieties in ways that would lock African farmers into the same annual purchasing cycle that American farmers were locked into in 1996. This is not a historical story. This is happening right now. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Don't these companies make better seeds? Don't they increase yields? Don't they help feed the world? That argument deserves a real answer, not a dismissal. Yes, genetically modified crops have increased yields in specific contexts. The evidence on that is real. The Green Revolution of the 1960s and 1970s, which genuinely did prevent mass famine in South Asia, was built on improved seed varieties. But here is what gets left out of that story almost every time it is told. The seeds that fed the world in the 1960s and 1970s were developed almost entirely by public research institutions. The CGIAR network, 15 international agricultural research centers funded by governments and international bodies, did that work. Norman Borlaug, the man credited with the Green Revolution, worked at a publicly funded research institute in Mexico, not a corporation, a public institution. The intellectual property regime that gave 4 companies control of the global seed market did not produce the Green Revolution. It came after. And what it did produce was not better seeds for the people who needed them most. It produced a price increase. Studies predicted the post-2015 mega-mergers would push seed prices up 2 to 6%. For cotton specifically, the predicted increase from the Bayer-Monsanto merger alone was 17 to 19%. Not a yield increase, a price increase, paid by farmers who were already operating on thin margins. Let me take you somewhere specific. India, cotton farming, Maharashtra and Andhra Pradesh. Between 1995 and 2006, official government records show 166,304 Indian farmers died by suicide, approximately 16,000 per year. I want to be careful here, because this story has been told carelessly before, and it deserves precision. The research does not draw a straight line from seed patents to farmer suicide. The academic literature is honest about that complexity. What the evidence does show, clearly, consistently, across multiple studies, is that cash crop cultivation, combined with marginal land holdings and debt, accounts for 75% of the variation in male suicide rates across Indian states. And the debt? The Bt cotton seeds cost significantly more than conventional ones. Farmers who could not afford them up front took loans from moneylenders charging up to 60% annual interest. When crops failed or prices dropped, the debt became impossible, and the seeds had to be purchased again the following year and the year after, with no option to save. The annual purchasing obligation did not cause every death, but it was load-bearing in the architecture of a debt crisis that killed 166,000 people. That is not nothing. So what has actually been done about this? More than most people know. And this is the part most coverage of this topic never reaches, because naming the problem is easier than finding the evidence that something worked. But the evidence exists. 3 specific things in 3 different parts of the world. The first is the Open Source Seed Initiative, founded in 2012 and modeled directly on open source software, the same logic that made computer code freely available and prevented anyone from locking it behind a patent. OSSI does the same for seeds. Any variety bred from an OSSI-pledged seed must remain permanently free. It cannot be patented, it cannot be restricted. The pledge travels with the seed across every generation. Right now, OSSI includes 38 plant breeders, 52 seed companies, and 407 varieties, all of which permanently freed from corporate control. The second is Tanzania. 20 years of sustained civil society advocacy, led by the Tanzanian Organic Agriculture Movement, representing over 100 organizations, has moved Tanzania from a Seeds Act that prohibited farmer seed exchange to a government now building what may become Africa's first comprehensive national seed bank system, designed specifically for agroecological farmers. Not to serve corporate seed interests, to preserve and distribute the varieties Tanzanian farmers have been developing for generations. 20 years is a long time, but it worked. The third is Ghana. When the Plant Variety Protection Bill arrived in Parliament, the Food Sovereignty Platform mobilized, not just protests, legal challenges, direct parliamentary engagement, transnational alliances with farming organizations across Africa. They blocked legislation that had been pushed by the same international frameworks that locked American and Indian farmers into annual seed purchasing cycles. They won specific concessions. The legal penalties were revised. The plant breeder immunity clauses, the provisions that would have made it almost impossible to challenge corporate seed patents in Ghanaian courts, were removed. Ghana proved this fight can be won. Now, meet Zara. She has been thinking about something for a few weeks. Her grocery bill has been climbing, not dramatically, just steadily, the way prices do when you are not watching and then suddenly you are watching and you cannot stop. She did the arithmetic on what she spends on vegetables each month. The number was larger than she expected. She had a thought, a small one. What if she grew something herself? Not a farm, she does not have land for that, but a window box, a few pots on a balcony. Tomatoes maybe, some herbs. Her daughter had been asking about plants ever since a school project on photosynthesis 3 weeks ago. So Zara went looking for seeds. Not online. Someone at work had mentioned a market 2 streets from the community center where a stall sold heirloom seeds, old varieties, open-pollinated, the kind you can save and replant. She had not known what open-pollinated meant until she looked it up the night before. She knows now. She found the stall. The woman running it explained the difference between what she sells and the seeds in the supermarket. Supermarket seeds are F1 hybrids. They grow well once, but the seeds from the fruit they produce will not reliably grow again the following year. The seeds at this stall have been selected and saved across generations. You can keep them. You can replant them. They belong to you permanently. Zara bought 2 packets, tomatoes and spinach. The woman mentioned a community seed library 2 streets further on, a place where people bring seeds they have saved and take seeds others have saved free of charge. She went. It exists. She looked at the shelves of small labeled envelopes, varieties with names she had not heard before, saved by people who live in her city, adapted to her specific soil and light, not patented, not licensed, not requiring annual purchase from anyone. She took 1 more packet, a pepper variety the label said had been grown in this neighborhood for 30 years. She does not have a garden. She has a windowsill and 3 pots her daughter has already named, but she is starting. Not because 3 pots will fix her grocery bill. She is practical enough to know the arithmetic on that. Because she has spent 4 episodes learning how the systems around her were designed, and she has decided that wherever she finds a door, she is going to open it. 10,000 years. That is how long farmers saved seeds, selecting the best, sharing with neighbors, adapting to new soils and new climates, building generation by generation the genetic library that feeds every person alive today. It took 47 years of intellectual property law to lock most of that library behind a patent, and it's taking farmers in Ghana, plant breeders in Wisconsin, civil society movements in Tanzania, and a woman reading a seed packet label in an ordinary market to start taking it back. Here's the thing about a door locked by a law. It can be unlocked the same way. If this changed how you think about the food on your table, share it with someone who eats. Subscribe so you are here when the next piece of the architecture gets named. The system does not explain itself. We do.